Standard local policies are settings configured by software operators that are generally required by software implementations and control which transactions the software propagates across the network or includes in a block. The maximum acceptable transaction size is a standard policy that limits the largest transactions that the software will propagate across the Bitcoin network or include in a block. The default value for this policy must be less than or equal to the value of the maximum transaction size consensus rule. The transaction evaluation timeout defines the maximum amount of time allowed for the evaluation of a transaction before ending the evaluation and rejecting the transaction, even if it is a valid transaction. This setting's default value is 1 second, and it applies to transactions that the software is considering to propagate across the Bitcoin network or include in a block. The minimum fee rule specifies the minimum fee that a node will accept for mining unconfirmed transactions into a block. Nodes individually set this rule and determine the minimum fee. The fee is currently determined by the size of the transaction in kilobytes. Nodes are free to mine or retain transactions that benefit their business model. However, there is a risk of nodes losing blocks when mining transactions that other nodes reject. Only exceptionally well-connected nodes should attempt to mine transactions that are not being retained by other nodes in order to minimize the transfer time of the block announcement and transactions to other nodes. Nodes use the dust rule to discourage users from creating outputs that contain fewer satoshis than it costs to spend them at the minimum fee rate. This setting prevents large numbers of low-value outputs from flooding the Bitcoin network. Here we can see transactions with an output value that is too small to be economically feasible for validation by the network, and as a result, are rejected. The dust rate has remained a standard policy across the network since the early days of Bitcoin and is likely to move towards having minimal rules around the generation of transaction outputs and the number of satoshis they contain.